everybody. Welcome to our third workshop. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to get started on this workshop. I think you all are going to enjoy our guest speaker this evening. I think gonna learn a lot. Our topic of our workshop this evening is on the topic of how do I prepare for a professional interview? So you're going into the interview, maybe you've gone to career fairs, maybe your mentors hooked you up and connected you with someone at their company. Maybe you've gotten some referrals somewhere else. Doesn't really matter. You are about to step into the interview. Maybe you've already had interviews before. This workshop is about how to think about interviews differently. We are bringing in guest speakers who are experts on this topic from around the world to give you insight and wisdom on how to make the most out of the professional interview. So this workshop is going to be about 45 minutes long with, and I encourage you to ask questions throughout the workshop. I'm going to ask you 3 questions during the workshop, which I'll have you answer. That's how you get credit for being here. You're now midway through the program so far. You should have already had your first conversation with your mentor. Hopefully you've already started setting up your second conversation with your mentor. If you have not, or you're struggling to get in touch with your mentor, please email support@ambition-in-motion.com. We need to take care of you so then you can get connected and make the most out of this program. So really, this program is all about how can you prepare for the first professional interview. Really, what you're selling your interviewer on is your ability, essentially your future potential opportunity. Essentially, you are selling them on your potential, because at the end of the day, people are not expecting you to come in and be the expert on XYZ topic. They are expecting you to be a willing learner and someone that's eager to gain knowledge and to be a better professional. If you can convey that, you will get the opportunity. But it will be competitive, especially in highly competitive industries. And I know that anybody that's in this program is more likely than not going into a career that's competitive. I mean, you would not have gotten a mentor had you not wanted to take your level, take your career, take your life to the next level. So with that said, I want to encourage you to keep your head up, keep applying, put yourself out there for more opportunities, and leverage the insight and knowledge that you're getting in these workshops to make yourself and to help you better prepare yourself for the interview. Now, before we get started into our main program, I want to ask you a quick question, and that question is, when it comes to the interview, how do you want people to feel about you? In other words, what feeling are you trying to convey about yourself when you are in an interview? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think if we are more intentional about how we want other people to feel about us in the interview, our likelihood of actually having that happen increases substantially. I mean, I've talked about in past workshops, strategy, story, state, which I will talk about in a moment, but this is a really big part of the story part. Like, what is the story that you're telling yourself? Now, I think sometimes we can interpret that as psyching ourselves up, getting ourselves confident, getting ourselves pumped for why we're going to be successful. And I think that's great. But I think if we could take it to another level, that being intentional about how we want other people to perceive us. So if we want them to perceive us as confident, or if we want them to perceive us as knowledgeable, or if we want them to perceive us as eager to learn and having potential, it could be a variety of things. But what I really want you to do is I really want you to identify feelings that you want other people to feel about you when you enter their world. Because you can be intentional about that. Your likelihood of having them actually feel that is much greater. But if you don't set the intention, you have no idea how they're going to feel about you. You've got really no control over it. But if you intentionally think to yourself, I want people to think of me as confident. Okay, what am I going to do that's going to convey convey confidence? Really, it's all about whatever that feeling you want to convey. Make sure that you are taking actions and being intentional about ensuring that other people view you that way, and that you come in trying to actively think about actions that you can take that will help other people perceive you in that light. So let's start under the next part of our workshop. Now, I've talked about this in the past before, and I've talked about this in previous workshops, but one of the big things that I always love to stress is the 3 keys to success in the program. There are 3 of them. That is your strategy, that is your story, that is your state. I bring it up every single time because it is that important. And the reason why it's important is because if we are not honing our strategy, honing our story, honing our state, we are not setting ourselves up for successful. If we let someone else drive our roadmap for us, we could end up in a location that we do not want to be. But if we are intentional about our story, if we're intentional about our strategy, if we're intentional about our state, we are much more likely to get to where we would like to go. It's kind of like the law of attraction. When we put it out there, and we put it out to more people, and we're more intentional about what we want to accomplish, and we're more intentional about how we are going to convey our bodies and ourselves to other people, the likelihood that it comes back to us is much greater. So I want to talk about state. State is the most important thing. Like physically, where are you at in your life, in your world? What is going on? I don't care how stressed you are. I don't care how mad you are. I don't care how dejected you are. I don't care of anything negative going on in your world. If you can get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, especially for the interview, you will be successful. I'm a big proponent of power poses. I'm a big proponent of screaming at the top of your lungs and dancing out. In fact, I'd like to do that with you right now. So for the next 30 seconds, what I like you to do is I like you to stand up. I like you to shimmy it out. I like you to shake it out. I like you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just scream at the top of your lungs at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out, let it loose, let it go, because you've got nothing to lose. I don't care if it's a popularity contest. I don't care if you're in a library. I don't care if you're in a house. What do you have to lose? This is not a coolness effort here. It's about making an impact and preparing yourself physically for being successful. What is the price of success? Getting yourself into a state conducive for being successful. Maybe looking a little weird to some of your colleagues, coworkers, or peers, but what is that cost to you in the long run? Nothing. They're going to say, you know, hey, what were you doing? Why were you dancing? Why were you screaming at the top of your lungs? You say, hey, I'm getting myself in a state conducive for being successful. Maybe they've never heard about it before. Maybe they've never learned. You can educate them on this. So don't worry about how other people are perceiving you when you are going to get yourself into a state that's going to level up your game, especially when it comes to the interview. Now, you may not want to do this in the office of a business that you are about to interview in, but you could certainly do it in the bathroom, in a bathroom stall. Get yourself into a 2-minute power pose. Stand up like Superman or Superwoman, or put your arms out like as if you're a star. There's a lot of things that you can do to get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, but you should be doing something, because if you're not, you are letting the way that other people perceive you essentially come up to chance. And you don't want to chance it, especially for the opportunity of a lifetime. And you have no idea which opportunity is the opportunity of a lifetime. It may not be this job. It could be the next one. If you make a positive impression in an interview and you may not land that job, that interviewer could have really loved how you interviewed, and that person may not be at that company for forever, or they might be, and they might come up with a new job. They might reach out to you personally to have you come and interview. It's all about the relationship. It's all about how they perceive you. It's all about that impression you leave. Your state is critical. Now, what is the story you tell yourself for why you are going to be successful? This is something we kind of did earlier when I asked you, how do you want other people to feel about you in the interview? This is a great exercise to prepare yourself for a professional interview. If you are intentional about how you want other people to feel about you, you are going to put yourself into a position to succeed, because then you're much more likely to manifest that outcome. Literally, law of attraction, putting it out there. I want other people to feel XYZ about me. Confident, smart, intelligent, well prepared. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's a weakness that you have, but you like to have them perceive it as a strength. Maybe it's a strength that you have that you'd really like to amplify even as a greater strength. Doesn't matter, but set an intention of something. Because if you don't set an intention of something, it could be wild in terms of what they actually perceive of you. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are the things that you're going to do to make the most out of this interview? Are you going to come prepared with questions? Are you going to come prepared with doing background research on the company? Are you going to make an intentional, focused effort on taking notes during the conversation, so then you're asking poignant, direct questions to the interviewer that are relevant about his or her life? Are you going to do the things that you need to do to be the most successful in an interview, or are you not? So the strategies you're going to learn from our guest speaker later on in this workshop, I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say. But before we jump into our guest speaker, I want to talk about one final thing, and that is getting yourself into a routine that can help you prepare for an interview. One of the things that I like to do, have an accountability partner. This could be it could be anybody. But what you want to do with your accountability is you want to share with your accountability partner 3 things that you learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to get closer to that internship or job. What this does, and you might think this sounds silly, you might think this sounds crazy, it could be another student in the program, it could be a friend of yours, does not matter. But what we've learned, what we've observed is that students who land jobs and internships through this program are substantially more likely to actually land that job and internship if they told other people about their experience. One of the questions we ask at the end of the question is, on average, how many other people did you tell about your experience in the program? What we ended up learning was that when a student told 20 or more people about their experience in Ambition in Motion, their likelihood of also landing their job and internship was substantially higher than students who didn't. There's a direct correlation to you telling more people about your experience and what you're learning in this program to actually landing the outcomes you like than not. So I want to challenge you to identify an accountability partner. Share with them 3 things that you've learned this week and 1 thing that you've done to help you get closer to landing that job or internship. Now, the other big thing that I want to bring up with you is our referral program. So we are now starting to open up the applications. And 1, I'd love for you to be in part of the program again. You can get a new mentor, you're going to get new content, you're going to learn from new speakers. But more importantly, I want you to encourage other students to get involved as well. We have a referral program for you, so then you are discounted to get in the program next semester. Essentially, anytime that anybody applies, we ask them, how'd you hear about us? If they write in your name, you get credit. If you don't mind being an ambassador for this program, I'm helping encourage other students to get involved and take advantage of this. I would greatly appreciate it because it would help us make a bigger impact on more people, which is really what our goal is. So let's jump into our workshop. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. I'm so excited to transition into this next part of the workshop. Remember to answer the 3 questions that we asked during the workshop. That's how you get credit for being here within 24 hours of the workshop going live. If you got any questions, any concerns, any issues with anything at all, please email support@envision-in-motion.com. We will answer those questions, concerns, and issues. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited for you to meet our guest speaker. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to talk about how we can prepare for the interview. Obviously, with this being a COVID period, a lot of virtual internships, a lot of virtual jobs, a lot of virtual interviewing. There's a lot that has changed with the crazy recruitment world that it is of 2021 now. There's a lot that we can do to prepare. There's a lot that we can do to put ourselves in the best position to succeed. We've got an incredible guest with us this evening, an incredible guest to give us guidance and feedback and insights into how we can put ourselves in the best position to prepare for the interview. We've got Bruce Smith here with us. Bruce is the owner of Effective Human Capital Solutions, where he has been an executive in HR for over 30 years. Bruce has helped coach many people into their dream job and many employers into hiring their dream candidates. Bruce, thanks for being here.
No problem. Thank you, Garrett, for inviting me to participate. It's an honor, and I'm glad to share. It's a passion of mine to do this with the experience from being on the HR side in the corporate world for many years, and now consulting and helping people in their job search and brush up and be ready for the job search world, and particularly the interviewing and resumes and all that sort of stuff, because it is a different world out there.
That's great. I'm so excited. So let's just dive right in. Students are thinking about their first interview. Maybe they've already got their first interview. They're working on setting it up. They're about to begin this process. What can they do right now to prepare for that first interview?
A good question. Very good question, because there is some prep work to do. And it's important that you all be prepared for the interview that you've landed. First of all, congratulations. If you've landed an interview first time, that means the prospective employer has selected you through pre-screening to do a first interview, and that's great. So they're seeing from your resume that you have the skills, ability, at least the base skills, ability, competencies, and experience that they're looking for to fill the open position. So they've seen that from your resume through pre-screening, which is very, very important. We'll probably talk about that yet during this meeting or this workshop, I would imagine. But anyway, to prepare for the first interview, it's extremely important. And one of the things that, as an interviewer, that I ask at the very beginning of the interview that you need to be ready for is, okay, to get us started, to get us kicked off with this get to know session, which I like to call the interviews get to know session rather than interviews. Interview, the word has too much stress involved with it. But they may ask, and they probably will, to get us started, tell us what you've been able to find out and know about our company and what we do. And second, what you've been able to learn about the open position that we're talking to you about today. So it's extremely important that you research and you find out everything you can about that organization that has been so kind to invite you to participate in an interview, and be ready. Things like how long they've been in business, what they do in terms of products and services, and you don't have to be real specific, but what their mission is. That's probably posted on their website, their vision or their mission, and if they've listed core values, that would be good for you to be able to bring out. The research on the company is very important, because that's maybe a kickoff question to get the thing started. The second is if the job description was posted, which many times it is, or at least a position of the description of the position, the open position they're talking to you about, please know it. Please know it, because and respond in generalities with the title. Well, I know it's this position, and I know this is the general summary of the position, and maybe the expectations, the expectations of the position. You don't have to go into great detail, just a summary, but those two things are very important. The second thing in preparing for the interview that are very important, because more and more employers now in 2020, 2021, including me as an interviewer, we've seen your skills. We've seen your skills on that dynamic, fabulous resume that you've created. We've seen a snippet of your skills. So we're going to probably talk less about skills. We may do a few questions, or there may be a few questions to validate that you really have those skills. Those questions being, so I see that you say that you're proficient in this software, or I see that you describe yourself as dynamic in both written and verbal communication skills. And they may ask then a follow-up question like, they're going to ask more around culture. More and more employers today are now using interview time for cultural fit questions. They see your skills on the resume. They see your skills on the resume, or you may have had a telephone screen prior to this pre-screening, prior to this first face-to-face interview with usually the hiring manager, maybe two people. So it's very important for you to prepare for cultural questions. Let me give you some examples, because you're like sitting there going, I don't think they teach that at my school, and I don't think they've taught that at my school. It's very common for us to ask, or for the interviewers to ask. So if you could describe for us, or tell us today, what are the top 3 things that you value most in your life? What are your top 3 or 4 values? Be ready for that. Just be ready and be honest. Just be honest.
Ooh, I love that question. Bruce, I'd love to ask the audience real quick, what are the 3 most important things you value in your life? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn. I think that's a great question, Bruce. Sorry, go ahead.
It's an absolutely appropriate question, because they're looking for alignment of your values and their values, because that if they're in alignment, that's a move on. Okay, so let's go on. So they're going to ask you that, and then the cultural questions will be around more situational type questions. For example, can you describe for us a situation that you've been involved with where you had to do this? Something. You were faced with this task, or you were faced with this obstacle. Tell us about it. So it'll help you as the candidate to reduce your nervousness and focus on a process of a response. So let's prepare some situational question responses using what I call the STAR concept. Maybe some of you have heard of it, maybe some of you haven't. STAR, STAR. The S stands for situation. Briefly describe the situation. Briefly. Briefly describe what the situation you were involved with. Now the T stands for briefly describe what the task at hand was in the situation. The A stands for what actions did you take? Not we, not the team, you. I had to do this. I did this. I did this. And then the R is what were the results or outcome of your actions? So situation, task, action, result, STAR. If you focus on your responses being in the STAR concept, it's going to take away your nervousness. Plus, it's going to keep you on track so the interviewer can get in more than one question in the time frame allowed for interviewing, find out more about you, which you want the interviewer to find out more about you, not just what your values are and the first situational question because you're so nervous you ramble.
I love that advice. I think I've seen this quite often when I've interviewed people where they go into the situation and their background of the situation takes like 20 minutes. And all of a sudden you're like, you get lost in the story and then you don't have enough time for any other questions. Like, I got to go. This is a 30-minute interview.
Right, exactly. And the STAR concept, situation, task, action, result, briefly describe the situation. What was the task at hand? What were the actions that you took? And what were the results or outcome? And hopefully, when you're preparing for the interview, you'll think of several situations where you can think of the situation, you knew the task, you know now the task at hand because it's in the past, it's over. But this should be a positive one. The task at hand, what actions you took individually, specifically you, and what were the positive outcome results from your actions?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think one thing, and it's not even to necessarily add to it, it's more just like to keep in mind is, as you were saying this, I was thinking, one thing I've seen sometimes in interviews is potentially a candidate kind of bad mouthing their previous employer and saying how like they were great, like they individually were great, but the company was like horrible, bad management or whatever. There's nothing worse like that you could possibly say because it shows the interviewer nothing. Doesn't show them anything positive, and it causes them to question you as you're from a cultural fit, if you are going to be a cultural fit, because all of a sudden you're bad mouthing somebody you probably said the exact same thing to when you were interviewing for that role previously. So I think bad mouthing an employer is ultimate, very much a no-no.
Yeah, it's a good point, Garrett, and one that I totally agree with. And what my first thought is back to cultural. When a response about a previous company in a negative manner, what that tells me about the candidate culturally is I'm hearing all just negativity. And whether that experience with the previous employer was not so positive or not, think about it this way. It was a learning experience for you, no matter what. No matter if it wasn't a good fit, no matter if it was an uncomfortable situation, we don't need to talk about it in a negative manner at all.
Totally agree. So let's talk about something you brought up before, resumes and cover letters. What are your thoughts on resumes and cover letters? Could you share with us a little bit more about that?
I would be absolutely happy to, because get ready, because this is probably going to be something that's counter to what, if you've taken classes or a class or whatever in resume writing or career preparation, whatever it might be at your school, It's probably Bruce Smith is probably going to say, forget what you learned. Forget what you learned in class. This is the world. Don't waste your time on a cover letter at all, period. We as the first readers, the first pre-screeners, we don't even read them. And I'd like to tell you why. Because I don't expect people to change their views, including you, about cover letters, unless you personally understand why it's important for you to change that view. We as the HR, usually HR people like myself, we get charged with the job of pre-screening. For example, we'll get communication from the hiring manager. I have an opening. I need you to send me the top 10 candidates that you can find me in the next week. So we post the job, or we start sourcing candidates, and guess what? We're pre-screening 400, 350, 400, 500 resumes. We have the job description. That specifies the skills, abilities, competencies, and experience for the success in the position. And we have this stack of resumes, or on the computer resumes we're looking through. We don't have time to read a cover letter. It's irrelevant. It's more important. We're doing a matching game to find, just make me want to read more in your resume, So forget the cover letter. It's irrelevant.
That's a big statement, Bruce. I think that's really interesting. I know we've got different viewpoints, by the way. My viewpoint on cover letters, and I think it really depends. I think I use cover letters as part of my cultural fit type of perspective. I use that to kind of get to know somebody's personality. Like, did they actually read over the interview? But I also think that there's a key thing. For most of the roles that I'm hiring for, they're not necessarily technical roles. Like, I don't necessarily need you to have, the ability to do open heart surgery, or like to be a mechanical engineer. Like, for a lot of my roles, it's very soft skills based. And so therefore, having a cover letter and seeing your communication skills and ability to convey a story is pretty important. But I think it depends on the role itself. But I think I'd love to learn more of your thoughts on that, Bruce.
Yes. We still don't have time to read the cover letters, though. We just don't, because we have 1 week to come up with the top 10. And so we just don't have time. I apologize. I'd love to read cover letters for written communication skills as well. But I look for those more after the top 10 and after that first interview that we just prepared for. I look for that more, and I encourage the hiring managers to look for that more in the thank you response email. Very much so in the that's important. Do not
tell me about that thank you follow-up response email. What are your suggestions for how to structure that?
Structure the thank you response in a personal relationship manner, because during whether there's 1 or 3 people on the interview Zoom call, the virtual call, or if it's in person, it may, people are still conducting them in person, social distancing and masks. It was in person. You've had a chance to begin to build a relationship with those people that were your interviewers. So at the beginning of the thank you letter, please show your appreciation for that, and that you appreciated them taking the time, because their time is very, very important. Interviewing is not in their core job responsibilities. It's kind of an add-on. And interviewing, it takes their time off their real job, their real revenue generating job, and takes time and patience. And they took time to interview. So thank them for the time, their attention, and appreciate the time and attention that they gave you. And you can go further by showing appreciation for their hospitality, their hospitality, and the information that they provided you. And we're going to talk about that too during the interview process. So that up front at the thank you. And then also you can hit on some key points that you learned and why, just a brief statement on why you believe that you're in alignment, positive alignment with their company and the position to be in a position to be successful in adding value. The key words are adding value to their organization. When I read, I'm prepared to add value with minimal training, I'm like, bring it on, bring it on, because value is revenue, they're going to be productive.
I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about the interview itself. What are some suggested questions you encourage students to ask during the interview to really set themselves apart and show that they're interested genuinely?
Okay, great. Good question. Good question. First of all, before I bring up some of those questions that I would suggest that you all ask, I'd like to ask you this, please. Wait until you're given the opportunity to ask questions. Unless it's a question about the interview question that you need clarification. And then my suggestion or my advice to you, I guess, is if you didn't really clearly understand the question, or even if it's buying time for your brain to work a little bit, paraphrase back to the interview in your own words. Do I understand that you just asked me to respond to this? Like you're asking for clarification. And they'll correct you. And it's giving your brain time to work, or it's clearing up any question that you had about the question that you were just asked. Because sometimes there is some vagueness, I guess, in the questions.
And it's okay to ask for clarity. I think that's something that students are very afraid to ask, is like, if you don't understand a question, the ultimate worst thing you can do is answer a question with not the answer they were looking for. That is the ultimate worst, because you're wasting time. You're purely wasting time. Like, it's okay if they ask a ambiguous or confusing question. That's okay to say, hey, do you mind clarifying? Like, and if, or maybe if I'm understanding you correctly, you're asking me for this. Is that correct? Let them clarify that for you, because the worst thing, I've actually been in interviews where I asked the question and their answer, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, that's not even remotely what I asked. Like, how could they think that was the question that I was answer that I was looking for? Now, clearly it's on me because I must have asked the question in a confusing way, but it's also up to you, the person who's getting interviewed, to ask for clarity if there's anything that's confusing. That it shows confidence, really.
Absolutely. I agree. And it demonstrates a couple of different things. It demonstrates confidence. It demonstrates that you clearly want to understand what they just asked you before you respond. So that means you're going to be good at follow-up as well in the job. Believe it or not, it's predictable. I mean, it predicts other things, if you get the role, which is great. But also, it kind of turns the interview into more of conversation rather than interviewer, interviewee. It turns it into more of a, like I call it, a get to know session, conversation, and it becomes more relationship oriented, which is great. It sort of just breaks down those stressful sort of, question, answer, and they're getting more and you're getting more. Because remember, in your mind, think this too. This meeting is as much for you. And if a job offer comes your way, the decision is as much for you, the candidate, as it is for the employer.
Well, let's talk about that for a little bit, because a lot of students, they'll get offers earlier on in the semester while they're still waiting to hear back from other offers, meaning that they let's say they get an offer in March or April, but they're not going to start until July. How do you handle that? How do you ensure that you are properly respecting the fact that you got an offer, but potentially waiting on another offer to see that might be better for you? How do you handle a scenario like that, Bruce?
Well, I call it the buy time method. You need to buy some time, right? You need to buy some time to see if something else is gonna surface that is a better fit for you. So there's several ways you can do that. Number one, my first advice is ask the offering employer may I please ask for a bit of time to think about this, and or you can ask to, I have while I'm considering this offer, I have a few more questions I'd like to ask, because the offer is usually coming from HR. It's not coming from the hiring manager usually.
Bruce, I'd love to learn your thoughts on this. This is something I recently spoke with a chief people officer about this. And she gave me one of the most interesting responses. I'd love to learn your thoughts on this. But she had a candidate she made an offer to, and he got back to her and he said, hey, so here's what I'm facing right now. I have this offer, and I've got this offer, and I've got this offer. Can you help me walk through this and just let me know your thoughts on this? I mean, I love just to kind of share with you the pros and the cons, and just help me kind of make the decision about what might be the right fit for me. And she thought that was a very professional way to handle that scenario, because she was able to realize, like, okay, I'm not able to offer the salary commensurate with what he is getting, and I can't get the budget to match that. So she was able to actually say, you know what, I don't know if we're necessarily the right fit because we can't match that offer, but I'd love to stay in touch because I think the way you've handled the situation is really professional. And for our next roles, like after that, we have a much larger budget, which we could hire you at a salary commensurate with you can earn. What are your thoughts on that piece of advice?
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. I've had it happen to me twice in my entire career, where a candidate came back to me with multiple offers. I've had them come back to me after presentation of an offer and buy time, like, can I have some time to think about this? I've even had them tell me, I've been talking with another employer and I'm expecting a decision by the end of the week. I'd like to see that decision as well. I appreciate that honesty. Fine, you should. But I've had it happen twice where there had been multiple offers, and the candidate did ask me to walk through. They didn't reveal the names of the other two companies, and I probably wouldn't do that either as a candidate. I just wouldn't reveal the names of the companies, but I'd reveal the elements in the offer elements in the offers to for clarity and to help me think about it. Help me think about it and ask for the HR person's advice in fit and what is best for you and pursuing your career. I think that's perfectly fine.
I'd love to ask the students a question real quick. What is the most important component to a job for you? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn more about that. But essentially, what for a job offer coming your way, what is the most important components to the job offer? I'd love to learn more about that. Post it in the comment section. So, Bruce, I'd love to ask you this. How do you help students determine what is most important in an offer?
Well, again, I'm gonna ask you for a paradigm shift here, guys. And you think the first and the most important aspect of an offer is the base salary. Money. No, it's not, because the base salary is only one key element of compensation in the offer, or other items that maybe even aren't in the written offer. Or maybe you don't get a written offer and it's all verbal. That's a heads up. You asked for a written offer. But the base compensation, in addition to that, what are the benefits? And what are the costs of healthcare, the healthcare benefits? What's the wait period? What's the cost? Because normally for a company, it's an additional cost to them because they're going to pay most of your benefit costs. You don't see the full cost of healthcare benefits ever in employment. You see your employee paid premium that comes out of your check, every pay period. That's probably about a third, or it's about 30%. The rest of it, it's 70% of it's paid by the company. You add that onto your base salary every month, Plus, if there's what about retirement? What about a 401k plan? Do you have a match? When am I eligible for 401k? If there's a match, that's additional compensation on your base salary. And it's telling them they want you, if the wait period isn't too long, it's like first of the month following 90 days of employment, that's saying they want to make sure that you are fit in the first 90 days, but after that, they're investing in you. And you can look for elements too in the offer about supplementing your development. Because ongoing development, like workshops, getting a certification, reimbursements for getting certifications, or an educational assistance program. If you want to get your master's or go on in school, do they help out with that? And all those things should be elements of the offer, and they're all of equal importance. It tells one more thing too. It tells an indirect message to you, how they value their employees.
That's a really interesting perspective. How do you analyze culture though with all of that? Like, there might be a startup that you're super excited to work for. It seems like there's high energy in the culture, but they may not have all those benefits and perks.
Yeah, it is difficult. And that's when you asked me to answer a question that I didn't answer earlier, because I went off on another topic. And that was when I did answer it in a way. And in the interview, what questions should you be prepared to ask the employer? And I said, well, first of all, wait for the appropriate time for you to ask questions. One of those questions should be, can you and anybody else that's interviewing you from that employer, can you please describe what the culture of what is the culture in your company or in the office, or what's the subculture of the department I'd be working in? What's the culture of that department that, of this open position you're talking to me about? Because there's big culture, overall company culture. Then there's departments, and then there's teams within the departments. That may be another little culture. They should all fit together for the big, and look for that. So they should be able to describe that. They should be able to describe that, and it's good for you to ask, what is the culture? And some responses will be, well, we have unlimited PTO. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? If that's important to you, that means they trust their employees, or they have high expectations. They make your deadlines and performance expectations, and we're not going to ask about your PTO.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So I guess what I'd love to ask the students, what are you looking for in the culture of your inevitable employer? What would you like to see in that culture? Post it in the comment section. I'd love to learn. What do you want of a culture in a company? So Bruce, this has been really insightful. This has been really fascinating. I feel like you've given some really great perspective and insight as to what students can do to prepare for the interview. Do you have any last, final, and parting thoughts or insights for the students?
I do one more thing, Garrett, and that's that I help a ton of people with, and that's that the first glimpse that those prospective employers have at you is the resume. And I can't tell you how important that resume is in terms of look, format, ease to read. Remember, I talked about the pre-screeners are got job description with skills, abilities, competencies, experience, work experience, education in front of them. They're matching your resume. So why don't we lay it out that way? Lay it out, make it, when you're designing the format, and I help people a lot with this, I'd be glad to help anybody if they want to contact me. When you're laying out your resume in terms of format, think about the first time pre-screen reader that has 450 resumes in front of them, and you want yours to go to the top. So make it easy. I can give an example to help understand, if that would be okay, Garrett.
Yeah.
An example, first of all, again, if you took a resume writing class, they tell you, don't write an objective at the beginning, it's too limiting. I disagree, but I don't disagree with the word of the heading of objective. I would write it as a career aspiration. That's the heading. And then you write it in general, like seeking full-time employment, where I can utilize my skills, abilities, competencies, passions. Passions is another word. Passions to add value to an organization, while at the same time growing in my career goals. Period. If I got a career aspiration like that opening, I'd be like, wow, this person wants to add value. This person, but still wants us to help them grow in their career, and we're all about that. Then the very next section should be just a text, couple rows of text boxes, and the heading should be skills, abilities, and competencies. And just list them in the boxes of the 2 rows of, like a table, where I can read them really easily as I'm matching them to the job description right next to me, like proven experience in whatever software, that they're asking for, or proficient in that software, or positive written verbal communication skills, where I'm going to see that in the rest of your resume, or the thank you to come. That's great, So it's very, very important. So many people. Oh, and please, your professors are probably saying, yeah, make sure you tout that high GPA. Don't even list a GPA. Do not. We could care less. However, if you have an honors and awards section, if you were on the dean's list a couple semesters, write dean's list. It's an honor. It's an award. Don't write your GPA. We could care less.
I like it. Bruce, that's really insightful. This has been awesome. Bruce, how can our audience learn more about you? I mean, I know a lot of our students are on LinkedIn. Can they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. You can ask to connect with me on LinkedIn. You could email me directly if you'd like. My email address is solutions.ehcs@gmail.com. That's solutions.ehcs@gmail.com. Please be specific when you email me if a question you want answered, or help you need, or whatever, and I'd be glad to try to do anything I can to help you. Oh, by the way, the other rule I'd like to break that you're learning in school, they're telling you to keep your resume to 1 page. No way. If it goes to 2 pages, don't sweat bullets over it. No. The content, the quality of the content and the format is much more important than 1 page.
Wow. Bruce, this has been great. Thank you so much for being here. Students, thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. See you, everybody.